Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. My voice has been feeling really good recently. Got over those sniffles and coughing, and I had going on for like a week. It got cold here. It was windy, and that just kicks my allergies up like by 1,000%. Now it's kind of calmed down here. It's been a little windy, but it's not quite the same. I've been taking my Claritin, and now I don't have to drink an entire cup of hot tea before I talk to you, and that's really nice. My voice feels really good. Hopefully, it sounds good. I went to a writers group meeting. First time I had gone to this group. I think I told you about that yesterday. And it's interesting that the dynamics I see in a group like that is very much what I see in politics and what is going on right now. And we're going to get into that in tonight's show regarding the New Hampshire primary, what happened there specifically. Because in a writers group, if you don't know what goes on there, a bunch of writers get together. I was held at this woman's house. Hadn't met her before. Beautiful, beautiful house. The nicest house I've been in a long time. Long time. And the house is in that area where I was up there in coincidentally called Bel Air, the Bel Air part of Pinellas County. Were all huge places. Compared to where I grew up, they're huge. And the house I grew up in was not small. But each writer gets to read what they've written for a maximum of 10 minutes, and other writers get to critique them. And it's interesting watching how each person takes the criticism that they get. I did not have a chance to read last night. I'm new to the group, and it's kind of a thing that you have to wait your turn. You just can't show up and read. So you have to wait. So all I could do is critique other people's work. And it was fun. And there are a lot of good writers in the group. There was about 12 people there, I'm going to say. Yeah, 10 to 12 people. And it's funny how defensive people can get. They can be open-minded, and then all of a sudden they're defensive, and then they're defensive again, then open-minded. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. No. And it all has to do with what they perceive as being the strengths and weaknesses of their own writing. If they think they're weak in some point and somebody criticizes it, of course they're very open. If they think they have a strength and somebody criticizes it, then they get defensive. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic to watch and see that part of human nature. Now, I had it easy, like I said. I didn't have to take any criticism last night. All I did was get to dish out some criticism, and I did get some pushback from a couple people. I'll be very honest with you. That kind of gave me that look like, I don't like what you're saying. But when you're a writer, if you go to something like that, it comes with the territory. But I'm going to contrast that with what went on in the New Hampshire primary yesterday. Before I get started, you can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. Regarding the New Hampshire campaign, the primary campaign and then primary, waiting for the results all day yesterday, wasn't it like, if you can remember this going back to high school, that test that you didn't study for? And you took the test and you didn't do very well, and all you were now doing was waiting for the results that you knew were going to be bad. You take the test on a Monday, and if the teacher's up on his or her game by Thursday, Friday, they're going to have the test corrected, and you're going to get back. So there's those period of 3 days, 4 days of dread, just knowing that you didn't do well, and everything is over except seeing what your score actually is. That's what it was like for me yesterday with New Hampshire. You know that you're not going to like the results. It's just a matter now of waiting to see them for sure, for real. You know it's going to be bad. Nothing you can do about it. It's out of your hands. Of course, I don't live in New Hampshire. It's totally out of my hands. I can't vote. It's just a matter of the waiting. And the results is, if you're an anti-Trump person like I am, were probably about as bad as you expected. I expected myself to get a D on that test. Guess what? I got a D. Could have been an F. However, Ted Cruz, he managed to finish in third place. So that kind of saved it from being a total wipeout last night. And I don't know if you are a person who is not a fan of Donald Trump, how you can look at it in any other way. All right, just kind of went the way we thought it was going to go, and we got the butt kicking that, I wouldn't say that we deserved it, the butt kicking that we expected. What we know for sure now, being that Donald Trump came in first and John Kasich came in second, and it was an easy second, although he was well behind Donald Trump. In fact, you add up all of John Kasich and Ted Cruz votes, and they didn't even equal Donald Trump's. And we're going to talk about the Democrat side as well. But John Kasich came in third. Ted Cruz finished a nice third, being that he didn't put a lot of money into that state. Jeb Bush, I told you, Jeb Bush isn't going away. If he's going to, I'm just going to tell you this right now. If he's going to continue to get double digits from now on, South Carolina, wherever else, he's not going anywhere. For all of you, remember all of you who said, back in November, December, he's going to drop out, look at his poll numbers. I told you you all were crazy. He has no reason to go anywhere. Now, I know he spent a ton of money. I think I saw a statistic. He spent $1,500 for every vote that he got. Or was it $150? It was quite a bit that he spent for the votes that he got. Spent an outrageous amount of money in New Hampshire. Whereas Ted Cruz, who beat him, only spent $18 per vote in New Hampshire. But still, in the end, it's the only thing that matters is where you finish and what your percentage is. And Jeb Bush got double digits. And it's hard seeing him drop out if he's going to continue to get double digits. Can he do it in South Carolina? I don't know. Can he do it in Florida, his home state? He should be able to, but we'll see. The biggest surprise, and you know I made some predictions yesterday, and I have to admit that my predictions were not close. This is why I try to stay out of that type of game. I predicted McCain would win in 2008. I thought everybody would come to their senses. They didn't, even though I'm no John McCain fan. I predicted Mitt Romney would win in 2012, thinking people would come to their senses. They didn't. Not that I was a big Mitt Romney fan. In New Hampshire, I knew that people wouldn't come to their senses regarding Donald Trump, but I thought that a couple of the other guys would finish a little better than they did. It seems like the people of New Hampshire didn't. Maybe I just have too high of expectations that people are going to wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I can't do that. Actually, people do wake up every day and say, yeah, I can do that stupid thing. But Marco Rubio, obviously that debate from Saturday hurt him more than I realized. And granted, a lot of other people, it seems, didn't realize how much it hurt him as well. Underestimated that. And I wonder if this is going to be, that was his moment on Saturday night, like Rick Perry, who said from 2012 he had 3 points and then he couldn't think of the third point. Is it going to be that kind of damage? I wonder. Now, Marco Rubio last night, after the results were in, came out and said that's all on him, not on his supporters, and that's fine of him to do that. I think that's what he has to do. I think most people, men or women, running for office. I'd like to think that if they underperform, that's what they would do. And he knows, I think he realizes, I'm sure his people read his own press, read what the people, journalists and places are saying about him, both conservative and liberal establishments are saying about him, talking about his repeating of the same phrase over and over in Saturday Night, and I'm still wondering about that. Is this what we would call, was it a brain fart? Did he plan to do it? Didn't he plan to do it? It almost is like Barack Obama. Is he a disaster because he's planning to be a disaster, or is he a disaster because he doesn't know what he's doing? Same way with Marco Rubio. Did he do that on purpose or do it by accident? Hard to say, no matter what he or his campaign may say about that incident when he was arguing with Chris Christie. One thing we could say, another point we can make about New Hampshire, though, is with Donald Trump coming in first, John Kasich coming in second, and on the Democrat side, Bernie Sanders getting 135,000 votes at least, and I think they're still counting votes in New Hampshire, probably close to 140,000 votes. Here's what we know. New Hampshire is not a conservative state. That's what we know. When John Kasich can come in second place, and I don't want to hear it, he finished that well because he spent so much time there. Maybe it helped him a few percentage points living in that state for the last 2 months. But it seems like he had a very target-rich atmosphere. So can we stop saying regarding Donald Trump that the support he is getting is from a lot of conservatives? I know there are conservatives out there who are doing it, and any of you are stupid for doing it. But this is what worries me about a general election, on top of the fact that I just don't like Donald Trump. I'm going to say it again. I think he's a bad guy. I don't even care what his politics are. I think he's a bad guy. But I look at how he performed in New Hampshire, and I see how John Kasich performed in New Hampshire. And their positions regarding government are a lot closer, I think, than Donald Trump supporters want to admit. And maybe John Kasich supporters don't want to admit that his policies are like Donald Trump's either. They're both squishes. They are. No matter what Donald Trump may say about a wall and everything else. I'm going to take his actions and what he's done with his life and where he's put his money than what he has said over the last 6 months. I know his supporters aren't doing that. I don't know what I can do about that, at least his conservative supporters. But it could be that a lot of his support aren't conservative at all, aren't Republicans at all. And this is something that we as conservatives always say about a candidate, man or woman, regarding that. How is Donald Trump going to campaign? And what would make any person who's in the middle choose him over the Democrat, whoever that Democrat ends up being? Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, if they jump in. There's still that talk out there. You can go to the Drudge Report. You'll see Joe Biden's name's mentioned above the fold at the Drudge Report today. I think that a lot of these people who are now voting for Donald Trump, I think in November will vote Democrat, even if he's the nominee. That's what gets me. It's the point we always try to make. Those people say, well, the Republicans, they need to go a little soft on the issues. We need to stop talking about abortion. We need to stop talking about gay marriage. We need to stop, to attract more of those people who are in the middle. Well, they already have a party that does that, and that's the Democrat Party. We're making ourselves look more like Democrats. That's not what's going to convince people to vote for Republicans. If they're already in the middle, they're there for a reason. And I'm not convinced that Donald Trump in a general election can peel those people away. Because you have to remember something, and I even have this in my notes, and this is the bizarre part about all this. Donald Trump, overall, has gotten very favorable media coverage. He pops up somewhere, there's going to be a camera on him. And in that, he's very much like John McCain pre-2008 and him running for president. If John McCain wanted to be on a TV show, on a radio show, he'd be there. Now, granted, it wasn't a conservative show, but if he wanted to be on Meet the Press, Face the Nation, if he wanted to go on MSNBC, CNN, they would gladly take him and never once say a bad word about him. He was the good, quote-unquote, good Republican. But as soon as he decided to run for president, what happened? And this was predicted by many conservatives. We knew that the media that had kissed his butt for so long would turn on him. Why? The media wants the Democrat to win. This is what's going to happen with Donald Trump. And you know what? The media is going to get away with it. I know that's not what you Trump supporters want to hear. But they're going to do that. And all of this stuff that you now poo-poo, you don't think is a big deal, the media is going to make it a big deal. And frankly, because it kind of is. I'm not siding with the media. But all of the problems that Donald Trump has, going, I would say, way back, and I keep bringing this up, the USFL, because I believe that USFL example is a perfect example, to use that word again, of what he is now doing in the Republican Party. And he was not successful doing that in the USFL in the late 80s. And dare I say it, I don't think he's going to get what he wants. I think that he'd rather blow up the Republican Party and conservatism before moving it forward. All right? I just don't know. In the USFL case, the NFL had a lot more leverage than we as conservatives do. That's just a fact. So it may be that eventually he overwhelms us with the power of his personality. I don't like talking like that, but that may be the case. But this is the problem that I think that he's going to have. Is he going to be able to handle bad media coverage if he gets the nomination? All right. I don't think that Donald Trump, for his believers, it doesn't matter. The problem is he doesn't have enough believers to win the presidency. And as much as I talk about how similar he and Barack Obama are, Barack Obama is much more calculated. And, of course, he didn't get the media coverage that Donald Trump, the bad media coverage that I think that Donald Trump will eventually get. That's part of it as well. Republicans, what have I said? Anybody who's had a chance to go up against Barack Obama has never been able to get Barack Obama to look uncool. Even though to look uncool, and what I mean by that, I mean to show the anger that he has for the United States that I believe exists in him. Nobody's been able to do that. Whereas with Donald Trump, I'm not saying that he dislikes the United States. Believe it or not, I just think I think that he's an elitist who really will use the average person to get what he wants. And I don't believe that is too far underneath the surface of him. And I worry and that's why I don't think he's a good guy. I don't know, and I wouldn't necessarily say this keeps me up at night, that there will be a media person somewhere down the road, because Donald Trump doesn't handle himself like Barack Obama. He wears his anger on his sleeve, his pride on his sleeve, and a lot of people like him for that. Well, that could work for now. But I think in a general election, he is going to turn off a lot of people because the media is going to get to him. And as much as he may drop F-bombs on them and do whatever else, he has to be in the mode of attracting more voters for November, not turning voters off. And that's what he's going to do. Because, once again, a lot of the people that he's going to need to attract are people who would vote Democrat anyway. It's a very interesting situation. Very, very interesting. And I wish that you Trump supporters would at least acknowledge that. That he needs more people in the middle to go with him, and really, they're just as likely to go with Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. And we'll see what happens in South Carolina and elsewhere. But those are not states, and we'll see once we get back to some of these more conservative states how well Donald Trump can do. And then you'll see who his supporters really are. And when his best performance of all of them is in the most liberal of all primary states, then you know that his support isn't necessarily conservative, which means in a general election, he's going to be battling for the same people the Democrats will be, and I think that those people they're battling for will just go Democrat. But you have to remember, like I said, getting back to the John McCain example, he was a darling until he ran against Barack Obama, and this would have been a case of any Democrat. They turned on him. And the media, yeah, they've made fun of him. I have made some disparaging remarks about him. But if he's the only guy running on the Republican side, and he's going to do some interviews, they're going to turn it on. Everything's going to come out. But then it'll be too late. We have our choices right now. This is the problem I had back in 2008, mainly more in 2012. We had our chance to make a decision who the front runner was going to be, and unfortunately, the large majority of Republicans picked Mitt Romney. I can understand voting for him in the general election. But in the primaries, when you have choices, that seems like an odd choice. And once he becomes the nominee, then it's too late to iron out all that stuff about Romney Care and abortion, his record on abortion, and him coming from the liberal Northeast. It's too late to iron that all out. Likewise with Donald Trump. If he gets the nomination, all of these issues that he has, it's too late to iron that all. It's going to be all out there for you Trump supporters. Stuff that I know that you don't know about or have ignored to this point, where you're going to hear about it every day. Every day. And I think the core of his support will start thinking about voting for the Democrat. I just believe that. Now, having said that, what does this all mean? Now that Donald Trump has won, it's not football in shorts anymore. This is the real thing. And I see that Ted Cruz, just to name one guy, has already come out with an anti-Trump ad that's going to be playing, maybe already is playing in South Carolina. It's now time for those others who really, has Donald Trump really been that attacked? I don't know. I know he's been attacked by Megyn Kelly, allegedly. I know that a couple other media people have had a problem with him. I know that he and Ted Cruz had a little tiff going on. But considering Donald Trump's long history, there's a lot to point out. And now is the time. I've told you, to this point, when these debates happen, my attitude was the candidates just need to get up there and talk about themselves. If an argument pops up with another candidate, then it happens. But I would not, as a candidate, go in looking to attack another candidate. But now that there's actually votes being counted and kind of the strong are being separated from the weak, I think it's about that time. I do. Now you have to start taking each other a lot more seriously. I think the candidates start taking Ted Cruz more seriously. The candidates, others have to start taking Donald Trump much more seriously. And we'll get to see how they handle it. And going back to my writers group example from the beginning of the show, we'll see the kind of character, we'll see how they respond. Do they respond defensively, like a couple writers did last night when they were critiqued on their work? Or will they handle it with a big smile and just nod and say that's wrong and keep moving on? We'll see. Remember, negative ads work. That people use negative ads because they work. Likewise, when it comes to a writer's group, the reason people give harsh critiques is because that's the only way sometimes as a writer you're going to get better. That's just the way it is. Nobody got any better by everyone telling that writer you're the best person in the world. Mm-hmm. We know people have become successful. They got rejected all the time. They got a lot of criticism. They failed, and then they succeeded. We'll see if Donald Trump, in particular, can handle rejection. We'll see if he can handle failure. We'll see if he can withstand a very detailed look at his record. We'll see. And then we'll see if his supporters react with an open mind or if they get defensive and they rationalize it. Likewise, what I saw at my writers group last night with a couple people, you tell them this doesn't quite work, and then they go into all these explanations of why it does. Well, if you think it's perfect, then why are you reading it to us? Right? If you're going to defend it and 5 or 6 people think that it doesn't sound right and you do, then why'd you read it? Why don't you read something else? Likewise, why are you there if you're not going to take some criticism from 5 or 6 people, writers? And the criticism, it's not like they were saying you suck. It was just like, I think you could shorten that up. I think you could phrase that a certain way. Well, we're going to see if Donald Trump's, not just Donald Trump, but Donald Trump's supporters can handle that. We'll see. Chris Christie, I saw today, he's suspending his campaign. And, once again, that's one of those situations. It kind of feels like it's like the opposite of what happened to Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, Rick Perry, and the rest of them. As somebody even put in a comment section, hot air, nice suicide bombing, Chris Christie. A guy, and this is one of the problems of these people who stick around and, they don't have much, large percentage. And I'm not here to criticize Marco Rubio or defend Marco Rubio. But it could be that Marco Rubio loses this nomination and continues to do poorly by a guy who drops out after the New Hampshire primary. Well, yes, I know. That's on Marco Rubio. I get it. But it does kind of feel like, at this point, if these people like Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson, and no matter what John Kasich did in New Hampshire, he has no shot. No shot. That they may end up becoming the kind of the proverbial virtual suicide bombers running at these candidates who are leading. Now, we can only hope that maybe they do that to Donald Trump. But they got nothing to lose, and so they're just going to dynamite the whole thing. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But this could happen when you have a bunch of people sticking around who have no shot at the nomination. But I got to go to the break, and I have a good analogy to that after when I return. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Red State Talk Radio, feeding the hunger.
Hey, this is Alfonso Rachel with PJTV, Zo Nation, and the founder and drummer of 20 Pound Sledge, and you're listening to RedStateTalkRadio.com, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio.
I'm a mom, and just like millions of other women, that's why I own guns. We're responsible, we're law-abiding, and we're everything that makes America strong. Every day, we're willing to use a firearm to defend our families. But the media will never tell those stories. If a mom puts a gun to the face of a home-invading thug and makes him run for his life, the story gets buried. But if she's unarmed and murdered, the cameras will be at the scene before the police. It's time for moms like me to speak out. We are the majority. We demand the freedom to defend our families, and we challenge the media to tell the truth about our rights. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
What does it mean for a country when its citizens turn on the news and expect to be misled? Because the reporters who once served as freedom's fearless watchdogs feel like distant characters in a fading memory. Today, too many journalists are just actors, playing to their boss's script. Why tell the truth when you can sell a lie for more? There's a price to pay for all this dishonesty. If the free press won't protect free people, it's our job to demand they do it. Do the work you say you do. Aim your First Amendment against hypocrisy and corruption like a hammer of the people. Kick down the doors of any leader who deceives us, and never tolerate dishonesty from your own ranks. That's what the good guys demand. We're the 5 million men and women in the National Rifle Association of America, and we will not play along. Join us today.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and if you don't go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not doing enough. Join me late night Tuesday, early Wednesday, 12:05 a.m. for Cowboy Logic Radio on RedStateTalkRadio.com.
And we're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I told you right before the break that I wanted to offer up a decent analogy regarding these people who can't win and what they're going to do to those few candidates that can win. I think of the example of my trivia team that I've talked about once in a while, my trivia group team that we've been very, very successful over the last 4 years, going to pub trivia up at Fat Cat Tavern in Largo. We've been together for about 4 years. We have won more titles than the rest of the teams put together. And a lot of times we're competing against 25, 30 teams. It used to be every Tuesday night. Now it's every Thursday night. And it's always interesting when you get to that last question because you're allowed to gamble up to 10 of your points on the answer. And they don't do it like Jeopardy where you have to figure out how much you're going to bet before you even know the question. It's just you find out the question, and then you figure out how much you're going to gamble on the last question. But for those teams that are way behind, they have nothing to lose, so they'll gamble as much as they can and hope they get lucky. Whereas I know our team many times we're up towards the front. We're first, second, third place going into the final question. And maybe we're not sure on the answer, but we're caught in kind of a purgatory of, well, we're not sure about the answer, but we think some other teams might know the answer. So do we bet some? Don't we bet some? It's a much tougher decision to make than that team that has nothing to lose. And that dynamic, I think, could come into play with the rest of this primary season, specifically on the Republican side. It very well could be that Donald Trump, maybe, the last thing you want to do when you're walking on a high wire is think about how high you're up. That's the last thing that should be on your mind. It should just be 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other. It doesn't matter if you're a foot off the ground or you're 1,000 feet off the ground. It's all the same. But when you start thinking about how high you're up is when you start to get wobbly. No different than jumping out of an airplane. If you're in that plane and you keep telling yourself, in 10 minutes I'm going to jump out of a plane, 10 minutes I'm going to jump out of a plane, all you're going to do is make yourself nervous to the point where it comes time to jumping out of the plane, you don't want to jump out of the plane. You're better off just thinking, hey, I'm up here for a little plane ride, and we're going to jump out of the plane. There you go. The less you think about it, the easier it's going to be jumping out of that plane. So in Donald Trump's case, a guy who's never run for office before, it very well could be that he's going to wake up one of these mornings and say, you know what? I might actually get this nomination. I might actually get to be president of the United States. And even, I'm sure, Donald Trump gets nervous. And it could be at that point, just like my trivia team, he starts second-guessing what he's doing. Because at some point, he's going to figure out maybe that he has more to lose than the rest of them. We'll see how he handles that. Because Ted Cruz isn't going away. Marco Rubio, despite his poor showing, he has plenty of money. He's still going to be able to raise money. He's not going away. Jeb Bush isn't going away. So, it'll be interesting to see if he can handle being what is seen as the front runner when it actually means something. Yes, he's been the front runner for the last few months nationally because of these polls, but now everything's starting to mean something. And as I think about it, for example, with my disc golf, when playing tournaments and the couple tournaments that I won last year, the last thing you want to do is think, hey, I'm out front. What you got to do is just think, you know what, this is just another hole. All I got to do is throw this disc down there, make this putt, move on to the next thing. When you start thinking that I could lose this and I'm leading, that's when you start throwing discs in the water. So that'll be another interesting dynamic. Wanted to continue to talk about this. If it were me, and I was part of these campaigns, and this is once again being the anti-Trump person that I am, I would have a psychiatrist on my staff, or a psychologist, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't necessarily have to have a doctorate, to get into the mind of a guy like Donald Trump and getting to the mind of his supporters. What do I need to do? What kind of ads do I need to run? What words do I need to use to get these people to see him for the scoundrel that he is? What do I need to do to pull supporters away from him? What do I need to do to not just make him look stupid in my eyes, but make him look stupid in his supporters' eyes. What do I need to do that? And I think I even, there could be a while ago that I mentioned this. Maybe it's even before I started on Red State Talk Radio. I was talking about something. Maybe it had to do with Barack Obama. That if I was going to run against Barack Obama, what kind of personality type does he have, and how do you undermine somebody like that? See, as I told you earlier in the show, I think that like Barack Obama, Donald Trump is a guy who wants to say that he ordered the Code Red, to use a plot point from the movie A Few Good Men. Tom Cruise says he thinks that Colonel Jessup, he's proud that he said he ordered the Code Red. He just has to get him to say it. And how do you do that? Well, in that movie, if you don't know, Tom Cruise's character figures out, Caffey is his last name? Figures out a way to get Colonel Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson, to admit on the stand under oath that he did something that he shouldn't have done. My big problem with Barack Obama is that no conservative, no Republican, no opponent of his has ever been able to do that, even though I know that exists in him. That's the only way you could sit in Reverend Wright's church all those years, unless you have that kind of anger inside you. Whereas with Donald Trump, he shows his anger, of course, a lot more, and anger is a word that surrounds his campaign quite a bit, and his supporters aren't afraid to talk about that. Well, how do you turn that into something where he just flies off the handle? How do you do that? Because once again, I think he's a guy that would love to just come out. And I think that still, no matter how outrageous he has been, I know that he can take it up a couple more notches. And a couple more notches might be enough just to turn people off from him. And to get those people who normally vote Republican and are conservative back into the fold. Likewise, even though I know that a lot of those people who support Donald Trump are not conservative, they're truly Democrats, so they're not going to come over to our side anyway. And like I said, I don't even know if they'll vote for Donald Trump in the general election. But by that time, it's too late. Once you figure that out in the general election, it's too late. So I think that's what I would do. And we'll see. I've never heard if a campaign has somebody like that. I think of like Star Trek The Next Generation with Jean-Luc Picard and Counselor Troy. She's always sitting there with him. She's a Betazoid. She can read other people's thoughts, other races, other aliens' thoughts. And she's always sitting there giving him advice. It may be that Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, whoever else is going to stay in this race, might want to think about getting somebody like that as well. So, fascinating, though. Fascinating. I think in the end it's a Cruz versus Trump race. The good news about New Hampshire is that I just don't see Donald Trump gaining any supporters, because I read something that he and Chris Christie are talking. Would Chris Christie's supporters go to Donald Trump? That's something that I'm going to have to think about a little bit. Granted, I think Chris Christie, not as conservative as some of the others, so maybe it makes sense. Maybe. But they're talking, and I'm sure they've talked before, even before Donald Trump ran for president, being that Chris Christie's from New Jersey, and Donald Trump is, of course, from New York City. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens. To me, it would seem more likely that, being that Chris Christie is so big on the governor thing, that his supporters, he might lend his support to Jeb Bush. That seems like a more logical choice. No, but I just don't know how many supporters Donald Trump is going to get from what happened last night, what happened yesterday. I think that his support at this point is tapped out. I think it can only go down if the other candidates can give Trump supporters a reason for it to go down. All right? It's not like, for example, in Iowa, where Ted Cruz was supposed to finish second and then he finishes first, and maybe that helped him do better in New Hampshire. And he did overperform in New Hampshire. And we are going into some areas where it's a little bit more target-rich environment for him. So, I don't know. Maybe he'll peel off some of those Rubio supporters. Maybe pull off so when the Carson supporters finally, come to their senses. We'll see. I just don't know at this point how many more supporters Donald Trump can get in the primary process. So maybe that's a good point for our side. Now, on the Democrat side, talked for a long time about that, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I told you, everything up until Iowa was just football and shorts. Doesn't mean anything, just preseason. Now it means something. The stakes are a lot higher. Votes count, delegates count, campaign ads count, getting your people out there to vote counts. And that's why I think that all of these campaigns need to ratchet it up. But in the end, I think it's still a Cruz versus Trump contest. And I'm hoping that Ted Cruz can figure out a way to maneuver through all of it. It's not going to be easy for Donald Trump. It's not going to be easy for Ted Cruz. And anybody else who pops up, if they're going to stick around, it's not going to be easy for any of them. But I think it is a two-man race now. With Rubio kind of faltering, he has a lot of ground to make up now. Lots of it. Now, on the Democrat side, the funny thing is, you know what the funny thing is about all this? Bernie Sanders blew out Hillary Clinton. Blew her out, and every poll said that was going to happen. But his blowout means less than Donald Trump winning, and he kind of had a blowout. Even though Bernie Sanders' blowout was bigger, Donald Trump's win probably means more. And it's just the way that the different Republican, or the primaries between the Democrats and the Republicans, how they're different in how they count votes and delegates. And that's why I believe that, it's embarrassing. Don't get me wrong. It's embarrassing for Hillary Clinton, especially considering that she won New Hampshire, came out of nowhere and won New Hampshire 8 years ago. But she is in a less, despite getting blown out, she is in a less precarious position than Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, or any of those guys. Even though it's more embarrassing for her what happened there than any of those guys, despite Marco Rubio underperforming, it means less to her just because, once again, because of the way the Democrat primaries are figured out. And I don't know if this is going to get in the way of her getting the nomination at all. I know that I read the stories today that Bernie Sanders won every demographic except the 65 and over crowd, which is kind of funny given that he's 74, however old he is. He won women, he won men, he won young people, he won middle-aged people, he won every demographic of race. If there was a group, he won it. And I'm just not sure it means anything at all. I think that, and in that way, I think Bernie Sanders is a lot like John Kasich. Bernie Sanders is not going to get a win like that the rest of the way. Likewise, John Kasich is not going to finish in second the rest of the way. Who knows how long he's going to be around. That may be a factor of it. But he could stick into it right to the convention. John Kasich's never going to come in second again. So the Democrats, they have their issues as well. And that's why Joe Biden's name keeps popping up. Elizabeth Warren's name keeps popping up. It's a weird, it's a great time to be doing a show like this. It's a great time to be a political reporter. It's a great time to be on the trail with any of these candidates and to do a political blog. It's a great, great time. On the other hand, I have to admit, I can't help but feel when Donald Trump can win by that much and Bernie Sanders can win by that much, that it feels like the United States is trying to shoot itself in the head. I wrote that to a friend of mine last night. You follow up Barack Obama with either Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. And to me, that is shooting yourself in the head. It's like suicide to me. Don't get me wrong, I'll get through it. When I have a lot less of, what would it be, chainsaws in the air than, as a juggler than all of you do. And I'll manage it. I'll figure out something. But for those of you financially, economically, with your families and your health and everything, who have a lot more going on than I do, it's going to be tough. Any of those people are going to make the United States a worse place no matter what Donald Trump may say. I told that friend of mine also that we have to realize something. We get the leaders we deserve. Eventually, we do. We are not going to change your ways. You'll eventually, like a funnel, you'll just slowly circle your way right down to the hole at the bottom. Another way of putting this is what Andrew Breitbart, and I've told you I'm not going to Breitbart.com anymore. What Andrew Breitbart used to say, that politics is downstream from culture. Meaning our leaders are a reflection of us, not the opposite. And so when you get Barack Obama, an arrogant, egotist, liar, I don't even have to mention his politics, but that's who I think that guy is, with a lot of rage and anger inside. And then you go to a guy like Donald Trump, who is kind of the same way. You think about flirting with him as a leader of your country. And you go with Hillary Clinton, another arrogant liar. And Bernie Sanders, I don't know how arrogant he is, but you surely wouldn't let Bernie Sanders run your local 7-Eleven. That he could get that many votes in Iowa, that many votes in New Hampshire. Maybe that's just, they are a reflection of us. Not maybe me personally or you personally, but collectively. It's a word I don't use on this show very much. That they are a reflection of us. And they are the mirror. And I got to tell you, I don't like what I see in the mirror. I don't like it. Just remember that. Politics is downstream from culture. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can find my books at Amazon.com. Just do a search for Edward Dentzel. You can go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book to download the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can find my shows at SoundCloud, Podbean, YouTube. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.